my accomplice, Mr. Wild Bob, Uncle Bob
All right,
Andrews.
I guess we were gonna call this the mountain sage, but everybody thought we were talking about making sausage.
Yeah,
So
I picked up on that.
yeah, so we couldn't call that the mountain sage.
Well, cohort in crime, accomplice, what have you been into? You wasn't here last
Well,
week.
I know, but my conduct has been much better than I would like for it to be.
I can understand that, but you're more talk than you are action in the old age. Hey,
What we doing?
well, nothing. I wanted to.
Okay.
Yeah, there. Now that's better.
Ain't that good looking?
Oh, yeah. I like to be able to see what you're doing when I ain't looking at you.
It's hard to tell.
Any comments, Bob?
Well, I don't know. There's so much going on in the world, and in the state and local, and we have. I noticed we have an editor of the Pollock Press that does not know very much about the history of this country, with some of the statement that he's made.
I don't know anything about that. What did the gentleman
Well,
have to say?
he's proposing to do away with the electoral college. He doesn't understand why it would be in a disadvantage to Tennessee to do away with the electoral college, as well as it would be a disadvantage to all of your smaller states. But he did a rather lengthy op-ed in last Thursday's paper last week, touting one man, one vote. And,
Well, man's a fool, is all I can
I
say.
disagree with that 100%.
I can't figure out why, if you're not in California or New York or possibly Illinois or Florida, especially though New York, unless you're in New York or California, why you would want to. I mean, it gives away your
Well, I don't.
ability to have a say.
It comes from watching television too much is the reason he comes up with these ideas.
Must be why I'm so smart. I ain't had a television 10, 12 years.
Right. And I say he hadn't.
I ain't had a television since before they put us on cable.
I don't blame y'all threw mine out too. But he come up with another one too. That he's way out. He just doesn't understand how that the president is the president of the United States. He is not the president of the majority of the people. He is the president of the majority of the states. We are a republic, and we do not elect the president by popular vote. He's elected as the president of the state.
Well, the states don't even have to allow you to vote. Did you know that?
Well, I know you don't even have to have the constitutional right to vote for the president of the
That's
United
correct.
States.
They can do a coin flip if they want to, and declare the winner and submit that as their electoral college vote.
I understand that, but he doesn't understand
I
that.
Well, I've not read it and don't plan to read it. I'd waste my 50 cents or $1 or whatever it is. Now, how much is it now?
75 cents.
Well, just look at all the quarters I've saved over the years.
But the states can also appoint the senators. They don't have to have the senators elected.
They do now.
Well, they do now, but they didn't in
Yeah.
the beginning.
Yeah, they gave away that state right back with a constitutional amendment back in the Teddy Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson progressive era. Well, I've been listening. There's a lot of people don't know much about history, and I've been all this original sin of the United States, and I keep hearing all this stuff about how we stole the land from the Indians. Well, here the same people will tell you that the Indians didn't believe in property ownership, so how could we steal it from somebody that didn't claim it? The only title, they didn't have a title to any land. What they had was what they were able to dominate, what they took for themselves and declared to be theirs.
Well, the way I look at it, the Indians, and I'm about a little more than an eighth Cherokee, the Indians held all their land by their power, their ability to defeat the other
Well,
tribes.
the same as everybody else. That's the way it
And
was.
it's just a simple matter. A bunch of white Indians coming in, whipped their ass,
Yeah.
and took the land. So I mean, that's the way I look at it.
Well, you know, there's bad things went on both sides, and you have to be a citizen of that time to understand it. Now we had people killed and slaughtered on both sides, but I understand. You read about a bunch of white people went in and massacred a village. That's sorry, but what you don't understand is some of those same people were out working the field, and they went home and their house was burnt down, and their young'uns is laid in the yard with their heads bashed in, and their wife was scalped and hanging up after they'd tortured her some, and then you come to come to think that those people are subhuman, and then you go on from there. It was bad on both sides. It was just a
Well,
bad situation.
That's very, very true. And I get so sick of seeing all of these programs that depict the Indian as a noble person. You know, he was definitely a savage. He did not live by the same rules that we live by, which were a little bit more humane. Not a whole lot more,
No,
but a
I
little bit
wouldn't
more
say there's much
humane.
difference. If you
than
look at
what
the
they
way the
live by.
Spaniards did, but then, well, it's just a different time. You've got to take context. You got to take context to understand what was going on. But you don't hear that in any of the reports. It's like they're hiding the violence that's going on during these peaceful protests. You know, they're burning buildings and everything else, but that's just a rightful First Amendment to assemble and to petition the government. They leave out the peaceful assembly part, but just like whoever writes the history dominates history. Whoever wins the war writes the history, and they're rewriting things right before our very eyes.
Well, I look at, the Black Lives Matter movement. I would give them a whole lot more credibility if for Black Lives Matter if they were rioting and protesting in South Chicago. Now, that's where all the black people are getting killed, and it's not on television. The fact that they're being killed primarily by other black people. So they need to get some credibility, and just because I think there was 15 people killed by black people killed by the police over the last 5 years that they can account for. 15 men and one woman, okay, black woman, was killed by police over the last 5 years, and that means death by gunshot wound.
Depending on, it has nothing to do with skin color. If you go start a fight with a cop, then you can expect to come out on the short end of the stick sooner or later.
Well, that's very true, and but your cities that are having the riot, they're like a drug addict. They're in complete denial of what's going on. They don't see it as violence, even though the business owners of these towns are getting hit hard by no business and by their businesses being destroyed.
Well, what about them people that they just declared their city block to be theirs, and the people that own that, the people that own the stores and the property inside the stores, they just left them hanging out. I thought that's why you had government, is to protect your life and your property.
Well, you know what happened to the freemen up in Idaho when they declared that to be their property. the federal government come in and took care of business with them. And that's what they're going to have to do in these areas they have declared off limit to police and any government authority at all. And you know, I like what Trump said. Or I mean, what William Bard said the other day when he was being interviewed by the Democratic House of Representatives.
He wasn't interviewed. He was lectured.
He said, since when is it okay to burn down a federal courthouse? And that was a good question. They had no answer for it.
Somebody asked him what he thought would happen. One of the Republican senators asked if he thought that the majority would be for defending the Capitol if it were under attack. And Barr said, well, he wasn't sure about that crowd.
Yeah, I enjoyed listening to what little they let him have to say. You know, he was they were very rude. They talk over, don't let anybody ask a question, then they don't even let them answer the question.
Do you have they been after you yet as possible interview for Biden's running mate, or you just don't have enough ethnicity for that?
For what?
Biden's running mate.
No.
They need somebody in there to help him. Somebody's got to tell him where he's at every now and then, whisper in his ear.
You think so?
You know, I hope that I'm wrong, and I hope I'm not making light of anybody that's got dementia. But if that guy ain't got some serious signs of mental deterioration, I've never seen anybody in that condition.
I disagree with that. You got to have some mentality for it to deteriorate. And Joe never had a whole lot of mentality to
We have
start with.
never had a lot of character. He's always busy stealing speeches and taking credit for them, stuff like that. But and it's funny to me that he's supposed to be such a common man, but the whole family's rich.
Well, sure he's rich, and he's used all his smart to gather a great deal of wealth illegally from the government, such as his involvement over there in the Ukraine.
Well, now I heard a speech he made 20 years ago, and I wasn't paying any attention to Biden 20 years ago, but I heard a speech he made, and he had a whole different. I mean, he talked sensible. He didn't talk like he was lost. And I hadn't realized how much contrast there was in what he was as a young man and what he is now. He's just a figurehead. They see him as the only opportunity they've got to win this election, or if they can't win it, they'll steal it, because everybody knows that you can't interfere with the U.S. mail. They're going to mail in the ballots, and that'll be straight up. I had a package that's supposed to be somewhere in transit coming to me, and the shipper sent me a tracking number. This was I ordered it last Friday night, really, and I got a tracking number when it was shipped the next day, and I went to the USPS and checked the tracking number, and it was delivered Friday. So, according to them, it was delivered before I ordered it. Now, if they can predict the future, we don't need to vote. But if they're no more accurate than that, I'm not sure we can trust them to deliver the ballots, or
I think the mail-in ballots are a bad idea, and it does give too much opportunity for people to stuff the ballot box and to print up a bunch of those forms and have everybody and their cousins to attach their name to it and declare that that's their legal vote for whoever they're voting for.
I hate to admit it, but I listened to NPR today, and they had a bunch of young people there that they were afraid they wouldn't be able to vote with a mail-in ballot because they didn't. I mean, this is what they said. They didn't understand stamps and stuff like that. If you should blame dumb, you don't understand the stamp. You don't need to be voting because you don't know what you're doing anyway. I don't think it ought to be just so easy to vote. I think this early voting is another opportunity for abuse. But whether it's abused or not, if you can't put forth enough effort to get to the polls, then you probably don't know what you're doing. You get there anyway. You might be able to pull a lever, but that don't mean you'll know what you're doing. Just like the guy that wrote the op-ed about getting rid of the electoral college. He's obviously a fool, and I don't know the man.
Right. Well, I read his op-ed, and on every point that he made, there was an equal, if not 100%, valid opposition to each one of the points that he made.
Well, I know. I saw or heard a little bit of Biden's basement coming out party the other day, and he was promoting the bringing trade and opportunity back to this country. He stole that from Trump, of course, and he's got all the right ideas about how to make the country prosperous. Of course, he wants to raise taxes, and that'll just kill the thing to start with. But besides that, I'm wondering if he's got all these brilliant ideas. I mean, we already know he's notorious for stealing speeches and that sort of thing. But he had to drop out of the race first time he ran for president because they found where he had made this speech that he stole from some Brit. But what I'm trying to get to is, if he's so blame smart about how to fix things, he had been up there 40 years, and 8 years of that he was second in command. Looked like he had kind of whispered in the Barack Obama's ear and told him how to fix stuff if he knows all that.
Well, you can look from 1960 to today. The Democrats have not been a friend of the black man. They have promoted the annihilation of black people with government-sponsored and paid-for abortions. There were more black children killed in New York City last year than were born, and they want to let the government pay for those abortions, and that way, by being a friend to the black man, they won't get rid of all of them. So they've not been a friend to the black man, even with the civil rights legislation. If it had not been for the Republicans, it would not have passed Congress back in the 50s and 60s. So the Democrats have not been a friend to the black man throughout their entire history. In fact, one of their members was the head of the Ku Klux Klan, a gentleman from West Virginia. About all of the sheriffs and authorities during the civil rights movement were Democrats in the South, and they're the ones that beat up on all the black people, whether they were crossing the bridge at Selma or wherever they were going. The Democrats were the ones that were doing the beating. And so people need to take that into account when they start trying to profess that and start trying how to talk like black people. That's what Hillary Clinton did in order to convince them to vote for them for Congress and for the President of the United States.
Now, I noticed Obama said that he was afraid that that Trump would not accept, now this is a joke, would not accept the outcome of the election and would attempt to, cheat some way in the vote. Now, Obama said that it was back in 2015, 16, I guess 2016. It was impossible to tamper the vote in this country because it was just too dispersed to indirect. But be that as it may, I'm wondering if nobody remembers. Oh, and that Trump would try to disenfranchise some of the voters, but they don't remember that they didn't want to let the absentee ballots from the soldiers be counted in Florida in 2000. You remember that?
Yeah,
They wanted to
yeah.
throw them out, and did manage to keep some of them voting, and they were off serving the country. It wasn't their fault that they didn't get the votes the way they wanted to do them. But he's forgot that, and as far as not accepting the outcome of the election,
Well, let me ask you.
they've not accepted the outcome of the last election.
I know they haven't accepted the election of 2000, not much less 2016. And, you know, so what if he says he doesn't accept the election? What does that mean? He's
What?
out of office anyhow. They're going to arrest him and kill him, one or the other. So,
You talking about Trump?
yeah, if Trump says he does not accept it, what good is it going to do
Your
that
phone's
if he
ringing.
doesn't accept it?
Your phone's ringing.
Oh, well, that's all right. You go ahead and I'll see who's calling.
Okay. Well, I'm going to ask you a question, but if
Okay.
this is nothing but a high-class operation, folks.
Hey, I'm on the show.
I'm sorry, quick question. Where are those things, Alan, in your
They're in my pocket. Okay.
Yeah. Well,
Okay,
now,
I'm
got
back.
that worked
I'm
out.
back.
You know, what do you think about school starting, Bob? Where you at on that?
Well, since I don't have to go, I was always glad when school was out when I was
Yeah.
when
If it
I
hadn't
was
been,
a student.
third grade is the best 5 years of my life. I'm glad I finally got out of school.
One of the greatest thrills of my life, they woke me up about 9 o'clock one night, says the schoolhouse is burning down. So that was one.
Well, it might be burned again now.
I think they ought to go ahead and start school. I really do, based on the information I have. I'm talking about scientific information as far as the spread of the virus, and also from a standpoint or two other reasons. First of all, the children need the education, and I know a lot of them claim
Well, they don't get much
well, they
education in
don't-
some places.
Yeah, but I know that, and they don't get a whole lot at home either. They don't give them less at home. So that's one reason. Second reason is if you're going to get this country back to work, you got to get the kids in school so the parents can go to work. So with all those things considered,
Well, they manage in the summer, to work and have kids out of school.
well, yeah, I understand that, but a lot of the parents are really hard pressed for a place for their kids to be if they're not in school.
Well, I think that they're in danger of losing their most effective tool, the indoctrination of young people, because if this homeschooling and online schooling catches on, they're gonna have sacrificed their earliest efforts to influence the minds, the character. They're fixing to hurt themselves in the long run if they keep promoting. And I think we ought to really remodel schooling and get rid of the message we've been using ever since, well, the last 200 years. They've just changed horses for school buses and made the schoolhouses bigger.
Well, I think over the past years it has served us well, but I agree with you. I think it's time to go.
Well, I'm thinking it's time to go too, 'cause it's so hot in here. if you wanna round up any comments you got, Bob, and we'll cut this off.
No, I'm just thankful so far that we've been spared somewhat here in this area from the tremendous effects of the coronavirus, and I just hope that this nation will develop some common sense, and I think it's got to start at the grassroots. And it'd be a good idea if we made a change, not only in some of our politicians, maybe, but in some of our newspaper staff, because a lot of people are influenced the wrong way by people who know nothing about the history of this country.
Well, what did you know? Herman Cain died.
Do know Herman Cain?
Did you know he died?
No,
Yeah.
I sure didn't.
The Kung Flu got him. He died today.
Well, how about that? I saw something of Herman flashing up on the TV screen when I got ready to come up here, but I did not look. I just
Yeah.
went ahead and cut it off.
Bye bye, Herman. We liked you.
Yeah,
And bye bye, everybody else. We're gone.
right. We'll see you next week.